1 week before Christmas, the town of Moon Hollow, New Jersey looked like a shaken snow globe. The blizzard erased the edges of everything as Charlie pulled the patrol car up beside the park gate. A man lay half propped up, a mark on his temple, his breath forming pale clouds. "Name?" Charlie asked. "Val." The voice was a thread. "That's what my mother calls me." In Sarah Adams's clinic, the smell of iodine and clean cotton clashed with the creak of old wood. Sarah, 42, curvy, confident in her skin, with steady hands and a stethoscope warmed between her fingers, examined him with strict professionalism. Even so, her pulse had to obey her head. The man was handsome in the way of an Armani model, clean jaw, impeccable proportions. She forced herself to read data, not lines. Glasgow 14, reactive pupils. She inhaled through her nose. Aries, discipline before heart. A crumpled paper slipped from the pocket of his soaked jacket. Advent -10 He held it without recognizing it. On his wrist, a discreet watch with the initials VM. Sarah glanced at the dead thermostat. The radio full of static and the snowflakes slamming against the sill. The road was closed, communications unstable. "The heat's down," Charlie announced. "Bridge is blocked." "Then you're coming upstairs with me," she decided. "I'll keep an eye on you up there." The apartment above the clinic smelled of cinnamon and cloves. Sarah placed a steaming red mug between Val's hands. Lady Catherine de Bourgh, a gray Persian with yellow eyes, appeared with the gait of a stern noblewoman and settled in his lap. Val stroked her with reverent clumsiness. The cat approved with a rumbling purr that filled the room. "What an unusual name," Val said, surprised. "I named her after a character in an English novel," Sarah explained. "She teaches you how to set boundaries with elegance. I think I remember Pride and Prejudice, right?" "Exactly." "I see your little head still remembers something." "That's a good sign," Sarah said, hopeful. Charlie came upstairs with a bag, shirts, trousers, sweatshirts, and also dry underwear and socks. "From me," he said, practical. Sarah handed Val the clothes and pointed toward the room at the back. He obeyed, and when he returned in the dry outfit, the fabric outlined the quiet architecture of his body. She kept her distance, eyes on the mug, voice steady. "You're staying, Val. You're safe here. I make the rules. Rest, fluids, and you tell me if the pain changes." The storm howled against the windowsill. Inside, there was the portable warmth of a mug, a cat, and a doctor who knew how to hold the world steady even when her own pulse trembled. The ceiling light flickered back on, just enough for Val to open his eyes with a faint, dull ache behind his temple. Sarah, wearing a loose sweater and her stethoscope hanging around her neck, passed a small flashlight across his visual field. "Follow my light, pupils reactive. Good. Any nausea?" "No, just a blank space." On the fridge, held up by a magnet, was the crumpled paper. Advent -10 Val read number 3 under his breath. "Pay for a stranger's groceries," he frowned. As if the handwriting belonged to him and yet didn't. "I found it in your pocket," Sarah said. "It might give you clues. But don't stress, forcing it will only make it worse." She set 3 objects on the table: the steaming red mug, the VM watch, and a key with a red pom-pom she'd brought up from the clinic. Orientation: east, west, south. "Your hands remember better than your head right now." She took his wrist gently and guided him. Mug east, watch west, key south. The soft knit of Sarah's sweater brushed Val's skin. Both of their breaths were audible in the warm room. Lady Catherine jumped onto the table and sat down facing the mug like a living sign. Val smiled for the first time. "And north?" he asked quietly. "Here." Sarah touched her own voice. "You call me if anything changes. I'm still on duty."
He nodded, daring to look at her a second longer.
Something about the way she adjusted the sweater that fit her a bit snugly, a small, learned gesture, spoke before any story did. She caught the way he was looking and added before he could ask, "This sweater is a bit tight. I'm going to have to buy new clothes. Anything but punishing the body." Or the mind. In that uninvited parenthesis, Val registered details without knowing why they mattered. The magnet holding a clinic leaflet titled, "Healthy Habits at Christmas." The way Sarah smoothed the hem of her sweater over her hip with an automatic gesture. And a shiny notch on the counter where someone had rested their forehead more than once. Lady Catherine slid to the back of the sofa and, brushing his forearm, let out a feline sigh that sounded like permission. When you said punishing the body? Val chose his words carefully. It didn't sound like a clinical case. Sarah held his gaze without looking away, but with edges. I learned the hard way. I'm healthy. Bodies change. What makes you sick is torturing yourself to fit. The blizzard rattled the window. End of topic for today. Okay, but will you let me say one thing? Sarah nodded reluctantly. She expected someone with a spectacular body to launch into advice about workouts and diets. But she let him speak. Maybe talking would help him remember something. I think you're an extraordinarily attractive woman. And if anyone ever made you think otherwise, they're more messed up in the head than I am right now. Lady Catherine approved with a deep purr. Val touched the key and the watch again, as if memorizing a map. He didn't seem aware of the weight of his own words, but they landed right in Sarah's heart. It had been a long time since anyone complimented her. And it felt wonderful that Val had said it so frankly, without expecting anything back. Thank you for taking care of me, he said, serious, with that contained intensity that didn't impose, just asked. Rest, Val. She was the first to pull her hand back. Outside, the snow erased streets. Inside, for a few hours, North was her voice. The open kitchen breathed into the living room. Sarah let the tomatoes cook slowly with onion and basil, blended them, and adjusted the salt. On the griddle, the grilled cheese crackled like a small bonfire. She cut oranges for dessert and gave them a shine of honey and nutmeg. Tonight she put in more care than any on-call shift required. She wanted to thank Val wordlessly for the comment that had settled her soul. You on the sofa, she repeated, professional, noticing him trying to sit up. Doctor's orders, Val obeyed. For 3 minutes. Then he stood calmly and set the table, plates, bowls, and cups on the right, napkins folded into triangles. At least let me contribute this, he said. Even with amnesia, I haven't lost generosity, decency, or gratitude. Lady Catherine appeared, claimed Val's napkin with feline authority, and sat on it like a seal of approval. He improvised another one with a kitchen towel. Sarah smiled involuntarily. They ate quietly, steaming tomato soup with basil, golden grilled cheese, crisp outside and soft inside, and finally oranges with honey. The snow hit the window pane with the murmur of an ocean. Val tasted a spoonful and paused, serious. If this counts as rest, prescribe me rest forever. Don't abuse the doctor and me, she said, good Aries setting boundaries, but with humor. Later, on the sofa, they spoke in low voices. Val touched the advent paper Sarah had pinned to the fridge with a magnet. I don't remember it, but I feel like this kind of list made me better, he said. Then you already have a north, she replied. Tomorrow we'll look for the rest. Silence filled with Lady Catherine's purr on the backrest. Val brushed Sarah's fingertips as he handed her the cup. She didn't pull her hand away. He waited, she barely nodded. They leaned in and the touch deepened like their breath rising. The first kiss was soft, clean and unambiguous, yes, marking what was about to begin. The next morning, the blizzard kept tapping the windows with the patience of a drum. Sarah moved through the living room in thick socks, a cup of coffee in her hands. Val slept on the sofa, bare from the waist up, the blanket fallen to his hips, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. Sarah sat at the table in the open kitchen, her back to him so she wouldn't be tempted, watching the steam from the coffee as if it were a metronome for self-control. She allowed herself 1 second admiring him without judgment or guilt. Then the doctor and her took command again. Lady Catherine de Bourgh occupied the back of the sofa like a guardian. Hearing the clink of the spoon, she opened one golden eye, checked that Val was breathing deeply, and closed it again, satisfied. Sarah left a note on the counter. I'll be working downstairs. I'll come up in a couple of hours to check on you. Rest, hydrate, don't stand up too quickly, and went down to the clinic. The repair crew arrived with snow-covered boots. The hum of the boiler returned at last, warm, alive. Ellen, the receptionist, pulled off her gloves and peeked down the hallway. How's Val? Stable, Sarah replied. Mild headache, better orientation, and the roads closed, Ellen confirmed. Emergency services just said so. It was nearly noon when the bell on the clinic door rang softly. Val appeared, hair tousled by chance, one-day stubble, borrowed coat, and that trace of elegance he sometimes carried and seemed to restrain. Sarah thought it was impossible for anyone to be more handsome. "Doctor, what time do you usually have lunch?" he asked, as if testing new ground. "Good morning. I went up twice, you were still asleep." "I'll come up in half an hour and make something," Sarah replied. "Eating well and resting are part of the recovery. I'll check your contusion upstairs and examine you again." "Done," he said, serious and grateful. When Sarah returned to the apartment, she found the table set, cotton tablecloth, 2 bowls, glasses with lemon slices, mugs ready for tea, and Val finishing the serving with care. "I don't remember recipes, but I remember gestures," he said, nervous and pleased. "I warmed a light vegetable soup and made a warm chickpea salad with lemon and parsley. Toast to go with it, and for dessert, pears with a drizzle of honey." He looked up. "Don't judge me too harshly. Remember, I have amnesia." He said it with a mischievous smile that softened Sarah to the bone. She felt her old defenses rise, the ones that hid behind oversized sweaters, but she pushed them aside with an honest smile. "Thank you. And after we eat, you'll let me check your pupil and palpate your temple." "Order received," he said, giving a small nod asking permission without losing his calm. Lady Catherine jumped onto a chair as the third diner. Val folded a napkin for her with dignity to give her a proper place. They ate while the snow continued drawing silence. The wood floor creaked softly. The citrus from the lemon cut through the tired air. For a moment, the world became just that, a simple lunch, gratitude made into a table, and a doctor who, between bites, confirmed the color returning to her patient's cheeks, without suspecting that a dreamlike night awaited her. The blizzard kept combing through the town with glass-fingered strokes. Sarah switched off the radio and returned to the sofa with a warm compress. "Last checkup for today," she announced in a low voice. "Dizziness? Nausea?" "No," Val replied, looking at her as if the light came from her coat. She pressed his temple gently with 2 fingers, checked his pupils, and allowed herself a faint smile. "You're better, if we continue." "It's off the clock," she said, Aries drawing the line. Val brushed a lock of hair from her cheek with care. "You make me feel safe." The advent paper peeked out from beneath the fridge magnet, like a bookmark for the night. Lady Catherine approached, sniffed the compress, released a deep rumble of approval, and retreated down the hallway ceremonious queen. "I consent," Sarah said clear. "So do I," he answered. The kiss began on her forehead, moved down to her temple, then to the corner of her mouth until reaching her lips. Val's hands slid to her waist, then traced her back gently through the cotton. Their breathing deepened until they reached the threshold of the bedroom. The door stayed half open and they touched the sky. Morning came with a cold light that made the dust shine like suspended snow. Sarah opened her eyes in her own bed. Val slept on his side, breathing evenly. She smiled without shrinking from herself, curvy, healthy, loved without conditions in that instant. The phone vibrated against the knitstand. "Charlie," a crisp photo grabbed from the internet and a line. "Does this ring a bell?" "Valentine Mandeville. Confirmed. Call me." Her stomach flipped. She looked at Val just like the night before, yet different under that name. Aries by impulse, she breathed to keep from charging. Doctor by vocation, she chose order first, his health, then the truth. She rose carefully. Lady Catherine escorted her to the kitchen. She made coffee, and while the machine thumped its rhythm, she let the decision simmer slowly. It was better to start the day with honesty. And with a steady pulse? The coffee breathed over the kitchen counter. Sarah held her phone 1 second longer, then placed it face down. Val appeared with the cardigan over his shoulders and his hair tousled. "Last night you were Val. Today I know you're Valentine Mandeville," she said without softening it. "My brother Charlie sent me a photo. They're not looking for you yet. You notified them you'd be undercover. If there's no news within 48 hours, they trigger protocol. It expires today at 6 p.m. He swallowed. The red mug in his hands looked like an anchor. "I don't remember it. But it sounds like something I'd do," he admitted with that arrogance he tries to tame. "Set a boundary so I don't drag everyone into my mess." Lady Catherine jumped onto the stool and pushed the advent paper toward the counter with her paw. Sarah unfolded it and placed it between them. "Read it," she said. Out loud, Val ran his finger down the lines. 1. Tell the truth, even if it hurts. 3. Pay for a stranger's groceries. 7. Call my mother just to hear her voice. The words came out in a thread of recognition. I don't remember writing it, but it feels like mine. Sarah didn't release the edge of the paper. With her other hand, she took his setting boundaries without wounding. Priorities. Your health first. Then the truth first to me, then to yours. And here I'm in charge until your CT scan or your memory says otherwise. Today at 5, we'll call whoever we need to call, and Charlie. Before that, I examine you. Deal? True to his Scorpio nature, Val chose loyalty. Deal. I want to be worthy of what I did right. And of what I'll do right. The stubborn snow tapped at the window. Lady Catherine nudged the paper again until it touched the VM watch on the counter, gathering everything together, past, present, and one specific tick-tock. And then it happened. His memory returned like plugging an old flash drive into a computer. Then we start with point 1, Sarah said, tightening her hold on his hand just a bit. Do you remember anything else?
He nodded. It's coming back.
And for the first time, he said his full name without trembling, Valentine Mandeville. At 6 p.m., I'll stop being missing, but until then, doctor, you're in charge. At 4:45 p.m., the apartment had the silence of a clinic. Sarah washed the red mug, changed the water in the vase, and left the advent paper stretched out on the counter. Val went over, with a steady voice for the first time, the points he recognized. His memory no longer hurt. It settled, like snow deciding to stay. Final check, Sarah said. Headache mild, 2 out of 10. No nausea. Steady gait. She brushed his temple with 2 fingers and checked his pupil. Good. At 5 o'clock we call Charlie. At 6 o'clock, we notify your people and switch off the undercover mode. Lady Catherine jumped onto the stool and placed a solemn paw over line. 1. Tell the truth, even if it hurts. Val chuckled quietly. Ready for point 1. The clinic's porch sign was blown sideways by the blizzard. At exactly 5 p.m., Sarah dialed. Charlie answered on the first ring. Report. Patient-oriented, mild pain, no red flags, Sarah summarized. We'll proceed with pre-notification to family and assistant at 6 o'clock to avoid triggering the missing person protocol. Copy that, Charlie said. I'll swing by later. And thanks for keeping this without a circus, Val asked for the phone. Charlie, thanks. I'm the one who requested the undercover. I didn't want to drag everyone into my quirks. Today, with the doctor's permission, I'll end it properly. They hung up. Sarah prepared ginger tea. He set out 2 glasses with lemon without being asked, like the good Scorpio he was, offering actions instead of speeches. When everything returns to normal, there'll be attention on you, she warned. Up here we stick to the rules. Rest, good meals, and 0 heroics. I obey, he said, serious and gentle. The blizzard eased a little. Lady Catherine walked along the counter and nudged Val's hand, demanding affection. After the calls, Val added, I want to leave an anonymous donation for the clinic. You choose how through the town council, with transparency and without your last name on any plaque, Sarah agreed. He touched line 7 on the paper. Call my mother. At 6 o'clock together, he said. Sarah held his hand for a second. Nothing more was needed. The plan was alive, and for the first time since the storm, so was the us. 3 days later, Moon Hollow looked like a postcard. The blizzard had surrendered, and in its place garlands hung between lampposts. Pine wreaths decorated the doors, a tiny nativity scene sat in the square, and a row of warm lights flickered as if the whole town breathed in unison. The air smelled of cinnamon, pine, and the chocolate from the market stall's thermoses. Sarah was leaving the clinic with her scarf pulled high when she saw him. Val upright now, steady. Recovered crossed the street wearing the same simple coat from his undercover days, a folder from the town council tucked under his arm. She, who had read headlines over the past 48 hours, Playboy, millionaire, coveted bachelor, felt the precise jolt of surprise. She had not imagined that a curvy woman, 11 years older, belonged anywhere near the future of that name. Hello, doctor, he said, smiling with no performance. Can we talk upstairs? On the kitchen counter, everything sat exactly as they had left it. The red mug, The key with its pom-pom on the hook, the advent paper with point 1 crossed out and point 7 underlined. Lady Catherine appeared, claimed the stool, and fixed her gaze like a feline notary. "I brought this," Val said, placing the folder down. "The anonymous donation for the clinic approved by the council. Handled transparently, just like you asked. And I'm bringing more than paperwork," he inhaled. "I know what people say about me. Sometimes I confused myself with that version. You met me when I remembered nothing, and you chose me anyway." Sarah placed her fingertips on the wood. "Aries, direct. I'm not a before picture. I'm curvy, older than you, and I'm not punishing my body for anyone. Whoever wants me like this. That's exactly what I want," Val said, with the quiet honesty of a Scorpio. "I want to date you seriously. As a couple? No circus?" A warm silence followed, broken only by Lady Catherine's purr. Outside, a carol played softly.
And, he added, pointing to the calendar on the fridge, Christmas is in 3 days.
"Spend it with me? I can take you to Moon Hollow's light walk, and then if you want to my place for dinner with my family. No press, just us. Or we can start here and take it slow." Sarah looked at him for a long moment. She saw the man who had set the table with amnesia, who had chosen truth over headlines, who preferred steadiness to spectacle. She breathed. "Yes," she said, and the words sounded like a light switching on. "Christmas together. And whatever comes next, with rules and honesty," Lady Catherine sneezed ceremoniously. It was settled, a formal date and Christmas on the horizon. The Mandeville house glowed with pine wreaths on the windows, cinnamon candles by the fireplace, and a towering tree dressed in ivory ribbons and small handmade ornaments crafted by the cousins. Along the staircase, a garland of warm lights flowed like a river, and every embroidered stocking carried a name. Soft Christmas music floated through the air, leaving room for laughter. The table looked like a postcard, an ivory tablecloth, gold chargers, linen napkins tied with sprigs of rosemary. In the center, open pomegranates and citrus scattered color and fragrance. Dora, 5, and Kevin, 7, Val's niece and nephew, placed glittery cardstock name cards at each seat decorated with drawings of cats and stars. Charlie, Sarah's brother, and Eleanor, his wife, stunning and African-American, arrived with their 8-year-old twin daughters, Tiana and Karen, carrying 2 steaming dishes, red and green tamales and a pot of fiesta beans. "We brought tradition," Eleanor said proudly, and Charlie added, "and flavor." The family kitchen already had its own parade. Herb-roasted pork loin, silky mashed potatoes, green beans with toasted almonds, and cranberry sauce. Sarah set down her contributions. A ginger-spiked pumpkin and carrot soup served in small bowls, and a warm apple tart that filled the house with the smell of home. Drinks were prepared without haste, spiced cider, tea, and rich hot chocolate for the kids. Amid the bustle, Val and Sarah exchanged a calm look, the kind of peace you recognize. Val's mother, Brianna, asked for quiet with a tiny bell and, holding a glass of cider, looked at Sarah. "Thank you, Sarah, for bringing warmth to this table before we even knew your name, especially for taking care of Val before you even knew his." The toast washed softly across the table. Tiana asked whether Lady Catherine also had a present. Val promised to make her a tunnel box for her next visit. Laughter followed. Dinner unfolded with shared tamales, beans warming their hands, spoonfuls of delicious soup, and pork loin that fell apart at the touch. Charlie explained the tamale sauces. Eleanor shared her secret for the dough. Val's mother asked for the tart recipe. Worlds blended without friction, accents, memories, and brother-in-law jokes. After dessert, some stayed to play a humming-only Christmas carol guessing game. Others, like Val and Sarah, stepped out into the garden for a breath of pine-scented cold air. Lights hung between the trees. Sarah and Val paused for a moment under the mistletoe and shared a brief kiss with a long promise inside it. "Christmas like this? Yes," she said. "And Mondays too," he replied. They kissed again, deeper this time, with that promise of a future still warm on their lips. Perfect Christmases and perfect Mondays. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe and stay to watch the next one.